Hi, how's it going? The past 2 weeks, I've had the luxury of watching two of my favorite films in cinema. And it's not something it's common enough, I guess, because I luckily live in a city that has a lot of cinemas, from your regular Hoyts and Village cinemas to your more independent stuff like Palace and the Astor, which is run by Palace Cinemas. And then you get IMAX, which is the largest screen in the Southern Hemisphere, the one in Melbourne specifically. And there's a good range. You get some drive-ins as well, not as many, but a couple. There's a good range of cinema things, and a lot of these cinemas will occasionally rerun films because that's what they do. You get you get ones in like the Lido, and I feel like there was another one, but I can't. The Cinema Nova as well. They're more independent ones as well that have seasons where they're like, we're doing cult seasons. We're going to do a director's season. We're going to do all this and that and whatever. Christmas season, a Valentine's season, that kind of stuff. And it's nice. It's cute. It gives you a lot of opportunity to see films with a crowd, which could be a make or break thing for a lot of people. And that's kind of what my experience was with watching these two films. These two being Scott Pilgrim vs. the World from 2010, directed by Edgar Wright, and Blade Runner 2049 from 2017, directed by Denis Villeneuve. Now, these two films are two of my absolute favorites. I've considered Blade Runner 2049 to be my favorite film, like my defining film for basically since it came out. I still remember every single time I've watched it in cinema. I've seen it 6 times now, well, just 6 times in general. And Scott Pilgrim, I can't count how many times. I'd seen it first on Foxtel one time back in, I think, 2011. Actually, I might have watched part of it in 2011 if I didn't watch the whole thing, and then I bought the Blu-ray, and it was like the first Blu-ray I ever bought, and I've watched it almost every single year since then. Several times on 4K as well since I got the 4K. And Blade Runner was the same. It was the first ever UHD disc I bought because I got when I first got a 4K TV, that was the first film I bought because I'm like, of course I'm going to buy Blade Runner. Despite the fact that its HDR grading in contrast to a lot of other films is not as high standard. And it's just one of those things where it's like, those were the films that have also defined like physical media for me as well. They've been the prowess of upgrading of just general existing. Again, like Scott Pilgrim being my first Blu-ray and an upgrade from DVDs, and Blade Runner being my upgrade from Blu-ray to 4K, jumping to the next market, to the next format, to the next medium. And so seeing these on the big screen is something different. Now, I'd seen Blade Runner before on the big screen. I was alive in 2017. I was alive in 2010 when Scott Pilgrim came out. I just never knew about it, never heard of it until I saw it on TV one time. And so with Blade Runner, I saw it in a Hoyt cinema at the back row, pretty packed crowd. Couldn't hear half of the dialogue because the surround sound speakers behind us was mostly like ambiance and music, and it was such a very interesting experience, mostly just putting you in the mental space of the world, of just its vibes, its feelings, and it was extraordinary. And a couple months later, the Astor projected it in 4K, and I'm like, I'm going to watch that, and I watched it. They've got two layers at the Astor because it's a big theater, single screen, and you got the bottom layer and you get the top layer. Top layer is much better for watching movies, but I go to the Cinemaniacs there and I'll usually watch everything on the bottom because that's where we have our presenter. It's great. You can still go upstairs though. And so with Blade Runner 2049, I sat at the very front of the top so I could just have just my whole periphery be just the film, because I knew how much of a visual staple it was, and that both cemented both what the narrative was all about and everything, but also it just made me fall in love with the film even more. And then had to get the Blu-ray, got another Blu-ray, got another Blu-ray, got a 4K, got the one with the bonus disc, got all this, got that, whatever. Scott Pilgrim, on the other hand, several years of watching Blu-rays, and now I finally get to see it in the cinema. And that was at the Astor, actually. It wasn't, to my knowledge, projected in 4K. They didn't note that it was, even though there has been, obviously, the new 4K with the new Dolby Atmos mix or whatever it was. None of that was emphasized. I don't think it was, at least, because when I saw it, it seemed like my Blu-ray version. There wasn't much extra detail, but it was mostly just the factor of watching it in a cinema. Watching it surrounded by people, which I was conscientious of, because I'm like, shit, people could be talking, could be on their phone, so I'm going to sit basically where I sat during Blade Runner that one time, at that front, because I'm like, I don't want to have to see people on their fucking phones, but I'm like, if people talk, I can't stop that, my ears can hear everything. And so watching that in the cinema was amazing, because it was loud, it was upfront, it was in your face, and when the jokes were jokey, people were laughing. And I had never experienced that before, because, outside of seeing it with my partner, it, like, a lot of it, you don't, I expect her to laugh at certain points because I'm watching it with her. I want her to laugh at the film because it's funny. It's a comedy. It's an action romantic comedy. It's a big blend of genres. But the thing was, I didn't really expect other people to, like I should have. But when you had the punchlines, when you had the jokes, you had him jumping out the window, a lot of key moments, even though these are people who have probably seen this film before, some of them probably hadn't, because it was actually a double feature with Mallrats, and most of the people stayed for Mallrats. I didn't, I left. I've got Mallrats on 4K. I've already seen it. I had to go home, I had work the next day. So I was fine to leave. But it was just interesting that a lot of people stayed for Mallrats, and I feel like most people just wanted that double feature, probably for Mallrats. If you get there for this 6:30 screening, you get to see Scott Pilgrim, and then you get to see Mallrats. It's not the worst double feature. They're both comic book films, but stylistically, they're very different. I mean, come on, one's an Edgar Wright film, one's a Kevin Smith film. They're very different movies. But at the same time, a lot of people laughed at the movie, and that was great. Both people who have seen it before, people who haven't. And I know some people had seen it because they had t-shirts that were Scott Pilgrim stuff. I had a Scott Pilgrim shirt. It was my Rocking Fulton shirt. I'm not wearing that now because I'm wearing my Godzilla vs. Hedorah shirt. Nevertheless, it was great. It was a wonderful experience, despite how energetic and chaotic the film was, and the fact that it played with my heart rate the whole fucking time. I was just being pumped with adrenaline the whole entire movie. It was a very uncomfortable setting, but I very much still loved watching the film because I love watching this movie. Blade Runner was the complete opposite. Blade Runner was one that I was exceptionally excited for because I had never seen it in IMAX, despite having seen the 4K projection at the Astor, and of course having seen the UHD disc. But I'd never seen it in IMAX before, and I'm kind of expecting maybe there's a bit of more of an aspect ratio, which I'm pretty sure there isn't. I'm pretty sure what I have on my 4K disc is exactly the same as what the IMAX screen is, and I know because there were black bars at the top and bottom. There was no times where it expanded to the whole entire ratio. Am I disappointed by that? No, it was just optimized for IMAX. It still looked great. They've got the premium seats at the very back, which I feel like I probably should have spent the $50 on, because it turns out they're recliners as well. I had no idea. I've never bought them. But I got the row right in front of those, right in the center. And that was, like, viewing-wise, perfect. Didn't have to move an inch of my neck. I was in perfect direction of it. I'd bought a ticket for my partner as well. I actually bought it an hour later, so 5 seats up was where she was sitting, and I was able to ask the 4 people sitting there if they could move down one so she could sit next to me. And they were very grateful of it, because they're like, oh, it's fine, we're just moving down a seat, it's no problem. And it's only 5 people, it wasn't much of an issue. Well, 4, she was the 5th person. But they were great. So that was the easy part, and I thought that was going to be the hard part. The hard part was the rest of the screening, because once the movie started, there were 2 things of note. Firstly, there was a guy who was sitting next to me who was fine for the first 10 or so minutes until he pulled out his phone, which was like, what are you doing? Like, he's checking his text. I'm like, there's no reception here. You're not going to get a text message from anyone in an IMAX. There's not even internet here. But then he starts taking photos of the screen, and I'm like, oh, this is going to be a thing, isn't it? Like, it wasn't distracting me or anything, but it was also like, why? The second time he did it, when he was just on his phone looking at his text, I just asked him, I was like, do you mind? And he's like, oh, sorry. And he put his phone away. I'm like, maybe he'll stop. For his luck, and maybe mine as well, the next 2 seats next to him were empty. So he moved across. I didn't even ask him to move. He just did. And I'm like, okay, this guy definitely wants to take photos of the fucking screen, which is nuts to me that he just wants to do that. The fact that none of the people behind me were annoyed by it, but obviously because they're in their premium seats, they've got the elevated view, so they don't have to, they probably couldn't even see us. Maybe the top of our heads, but they wouldn't have seen him on his phone. So no one told him to stop being on his phone or whatever, and when he was on his phone taking photos, he didn't have flash, there was no sound effects, nothing like that, so I wasn't annoyed. I was like, that's fine. Like, he's away from me, I'm not annoyed by him now. I'm aware that he's doing that, but it's not like I can see the screen through his phone, like he's trying to take it, sneakily, but also, I don't know, weird choice. I don't understand IMAX cinemas anymore. It used to be fun going there and just experiencing the movie, but most of the time, 1 out of 3 times I go there now, there's either people talking or there's people on their phone. And I'm like, fucking Christ's sake, these tickets are $38 Australian dollars for a regular seat. It's like $51 for the premium. I'm like, why are you on your phone? Why are you talking in a cinema? Most of these are not even like new, most of these are new movies, and it's just bizarre to me, I've seen Oppenheimer there and people were talking. I'm like, what are you doing? It's crazy. I don't understand it myself. It's just ridiculous behavior, especially because it's such an expensive cinema. Like, this isn't like just your regular Hoyts. This is prestigious shit, like, in terms of the image design, the sound design. I expect people to shut the fuck up, put their phones in the bin, and then watch and enjoy a movie. Be immersed in it. That's the whole point of IMAX. It's not just there because, hey, you get a slightly larger image. Like, yes, true, that is there, and also the sound design, but it's like, what are you doing? So people are still fucking morons. That's just great. At least for Scott Pilgrim, I didn't have to worry about that because I couldn't see any phones. But if people were talking, they weren't really talking. They were laughing with the movie. Everyone was just there to have a good time, and that was great. Whereas Blade Runner, just this one guy. I'm pretty sure there was another guy far down the left-hand side, but luckily my partner was in the way, so I couldn't actually see the person who I'm pretty sure was also on their phone with the brightness up. And it just doesn't... I don't understand it. Ironically, though, the guy next to me wasn't the biggest issue I had. The biggest issue I actually had was the fact that the whole time I could hear the projector. Because there was just a buzzing noise the whole time, thinking, oh, maybe it's just like an aircon and they'll turn it off. Or maybe it's a speaker that's just on and they'll just unplug it or whatever and turn it off. Or maybe it's for surround sound, it'll kick in when the movie starts. And it wasn't. And the movie's a pretty quiet movie during a lot of parts. Like, it is very heavy on its bass. It has a great score. And when those scenes come in and there's action and everything and there's a lot of sound, you don't notice the stuff behind you. But when it's quiet, and there's a lot of quiet scenes, especially the Vegas Strip scene in particular, all you can hear is the buzzing from that. And I'm pretty sure most people couldn't, because I moved a couple seats down when the movie was over, and I couldn't. It grew fainter as I moved away. I'd never heard it before. I'm thinking, how have I never heard this sound before? But because I'm sitting directly in the middle, I'm like, okay, it's definitely because I'm sitting right here. Maybe if it was like 2 rows down, I wouldn't hear it as much, and I would have had like the best experience, especially because it's not a full IMAX ratio, so I wouldn't be looking up like that. I'd still be able to look straight on. But visually, I had the best seat next to the premium ones. So I'm like, how did the premium people not complain about this? And I asked them after the film, they couldn't hear it. And of course, when I looked up and I was talking to my partner about it after the fact, I was like, it's the projector booth. I can just hear a buzzing coming from the projector booth, and I'm like, maybe it's like a fan to keep it cool, or maybe it's just the projector itself because it's running an IMAX projection. Because I imagine it's shooting the projection forward, not being digitally, shot onto the screen. I'm pretty sure that's how IMAX works. I might be wrong, and I'm probably wrong to some degree, but I'm also like, I don't know, because you'd think if they're going to get the full IMAX ratio, how can they shoot that? But I know they have projectors there because I've seen them online. They've posted images of the film reels they get and the projectors that they have. So I'm like, they can't be shooting these reverse. I'm pretty sure they don't do that. And again, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm not. So I'm like, if I am wrong, what the fuck was making that noise the whole time? Now, luckily, after about half an hour, the sound became background noise. So by the time I got to the Vegas Strip, I wasn't really aware that the sound was there, but I was still aware. But it was just like it was part of the film. But the experience because of it was vastly different to Scott Pilgrim. Where Scott Pilgrim, I still had this faster heartbeat and I was uncomfortable because of that, because I've just been having anxiety-related issues for the last couple of months and it has not been fun. and I assume it's because of that, at least I could still enjoy everything else outside of me. If I'm the problem, I'm the problem. If everything else is fine, then that's great. But this was an external factor that I can't change for Blade Runner, and it kind of really took me out of the movie a lot of the times. And for my own benefit, I'm like, look, I've seen this film a fucking lot of times. I've seen it, well, by that stage I counted 6 times that I'd seen it. So clearly, I don't need to stress, you know, because I can just sit here and watch the visuals. And when the loud score comes in and, you know, I can embrace the sound design that is from the score, from all of the speakers erupting. There's a reason why I don't watch it as often here, because it's such a loud movie in the rear speakers, and if I've got someone next door, they're going to get crook. And I was lucky to be like, look, I can at least look at it that way. I'm here to look at the visuals, to hear the sound. Do I need to be emotionally involved with the story? Not particularly. It's a 3-hour-long film. I've seen it plenty of times. I know all the story beats. There's no extra details I need to pick up here. I've experienced all of this before. And that's kind of the most interesting factor to me, where, like, Blade Runner was kind of ruined by what I wanted, the theater experience. Whereas, and I've been wanting to watch it in IMAX for a long time. The only reason I haven't is because they've always done double features. They've always done double features of Blade Runner and Blade Runner 2049, and it's not a bad double feature. The problem is, I've seen Blade Runner in IMAX already. I have no interest in seeing that in IMAX again. I have absolutely no interest in seeing that in IMAX again. I'm like, I was happy to see it the one time. I didn't get much of an experience out of it. Seeing films that are not actually in the IMAX ratio, I haven't enjoyed as much. Like, I could watch Blade Runner projected in 4K at the Astor and I'd be fine. And to be fair, if the Astor do 2049 again, I'll probably watch it again. But I probably won't watch it at the IMAX again, because I'm like, unless they do it again in like a couple months' time or in a year's time. They're doing a Space Timber right now, so they're doing a bunch of films in 4K and an IMAX that are perfect for the IMAX screen. And I'm like, that would be great, except next time buy premium seats. And I couldn't have at the time, because when I went to buy the tickets, those seats had sold out. Not all of them, but a good enough array that I was like, I could either get a further down seat that's premium, or directly in the middle at the top, right in front of premium. At least now I know that unless I'm watching like a bombastic action film, or a film that has a big score, or that's constantly sound heavy, that'll drown out that noise, then I can book those seats, you know. But if there's going to be a lot of movies with a lot of quiet parts, like with Blade Runner, something that's more contemplative, more artistic in that degree, I can't really do that. And so that was kind of an interesting experience for what it would sound like. I couldn't emotionally connect with the film because I couldn't get that sound out of my fucking head. And trust me, every time I had to turn my, you know, if I was like cracking my neck or whatever, I'm like, turn my head that way, it gets stronger in the sound there, or I go that way. Even at one point, my partner leant her head on my shoulder, for example, and I could hear a higher buzz because the sound was reflecting off of her fucking head into my ear. And I'm like, how has nobody ever complained about this? Did I complain about it? No. That's probably why no one's complained about it. There, I have my internet forums. I'm not going to go to the IMAX staff and complain. So, yeah, it's something else. But look, as an overall, what did I really gain from this experience? I'm still happy as a bucket list thing, because I love rewatching films in cinema. You know, I've done it for The Thing, I've done it for Alien, Videodrome, Aliens, because they did the Alien double feature at the Astor. They do that every year. It's fantastic. Alien in 4K with Aliens on 70 mil. I think it's the theatrical cut though, but still, hell of a double feature. You know, the Cinemaniacs, the film group that I'm part of, every film we screen is a rerun. There's never a new film. And most of the time, if I'm lucky, I've seen the films before, and I get a new experience of the person presenting it, telling you about the film and everything, about its production, its history, whatever, and then I get to watch the film with a crowd. And the crowd could be shit. You know, the Astor is an old building, you have one person walking down with high heels, and it's loud and everyone can fucking hear it. Or you get someone talking, and because it's an old building, the sound travels around the room. You can hear someone talking right at the very front. It's fucking nuts. Up the top, it's not so bad, but down below, you can definitely hear that kind of stuff. You know, people will be on their phones. There'll be all kinds of stuff, because it's still kind of a regular cinema. You know, it just happens to have one really big screen. I still love going there. It's one of my favorite places to be at, and I love going, especially for the Cinemaniacs. And even most recently, this past weekend, we had a double feature of The Invisible Man and The Invisible Man Returns, and I've seen both of those films. So I'm like, great, I get to introduce my partner to The Invisible Man. I get to watch it with a bunch of people who have and haven't seen it, laugh at it with a crowd because it's quite a funny film, and then watch the sequel. It's great. I love watching and rewatching these films in cinema. So to be able to have that experience, it just is something different, you know? And I think maybe because of Blade Runner, I've seen it twice in theater before, it really just wasn't that much of a different experience. It just happened to be IMAX this time, and honestly, didn't really do much for me. Like, I'm like, yeah, it's great visually. If you can sit there and connect with the visuals, then great. You might have an absolute uproarious time, and I still fucking love the film. But it even made me think, after the film, I was like, man, maybe Blade Runner isn't my favorite film. But I'm like, it's a much more depressing film. It's not as positive. It's not that kind of film. It's not the happy-go-lucky film. It's why I haven't seen it as often. You know, I could have watched it once or twice a year, like most people would do with their favorite films. Some people might not. But because of its tone and its subject matter, it's not always the most interesting thing to watch all the time. Not to mention that now that AI is such a thing, to watch this film again and be like, wow, time has really changed since AI became a thing, because this film reads very differently and kind of much more hauntingly, mostly because of the AI girlfriend, which is fucking nuts to watch. The whole scene where they have Ana de Armas' character and, is it Mackenzie Davis? Where they become one, and they're like swishing their hands to like click, and you just see like several fingers laid on top of each other. It's fucking like, oh my god, it's the whole six finger problem all over again. It's nuts. But this is, you know, actually art, and it's real. They did this, and it's insane, and it's wonderful. So I think because of that, I don't know, but I enjoy Scott Pilgrim, and I endlessly enjoy that movie. So it's like, I'm never not happy when that film is on, and I think that's the contrast. Scott Pilgrim makes me immensely joyful, where Blade Runner does not. But yeah, sometimes you just want to zone out and be in a world that's just a dystopian nightmare, but also shot in the most beautiful way possible, and tells such a compelling and rich story. And then you have Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, which is like kind of exactly the same, except it's just a lot quicker. If that movie was 3 hours, it would be fucking nuts. But instead it's 2 hours, and it's like still really good, but just so quick. So yeah. Anyway, that's all. That's my thoughts. I definitely did not regret watching Scott Pilgrim in cinema. I would love to do that again. Just because with a crowd, it's really fun. But again, you got to have a good crowd for it, and I was lucky that I had a good crowd. With Blade Runner, even if the guy next to me wasn't on his phone, wasn't taking photos, and it was just that noise from that fucking projector, maybe I would have still had a better time, but given how he was the least of my concerns in contrast to the fucking thing that was making noise during a movie, nuts. So anyway, I guess I've learnt my lesson when it comes to IMAX, that I really have to find a better seat that isn't preferably premium, but isn't that very back row. The row L. Good God. Anyway, that's all. Thanks for watching. See you kids next time. Let me know of any annoying experiences you've had in the IMAX. Or just the joy that you might get of watching your favorite film in the cinema, if you ever get that joy. I know that's a very big thing in America, which I appreciate, you know. So, yeah. Anyway, bye.